prayers to help our mind. Good morning. And we'll start as usual with the prayers to help us get into the best state of mind for what we're doing here. And then we'll do a little bit of meditation on what we were looking at last time.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one thus gone, foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you are born on this earth, you pay 7 strides to sit, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow, with pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best supreme guide, to you I bow, with the supreme science, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the foe faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
So feel how incredibly fortunate we are that we have the chance to listen to and reflect on, think about, meditate on the Lamrim, which contains the most important points of the Buddha's teachings for how to get from where we are now as unenlightened beings, suffering in samsara, to the state of full enlightenment, Buddhahood. We have the potential to do that. We just need to know how to do it and then do what we need to do. And this is the best thing we can do for ourselves. It's the best thing we can do for others, for all other beings. So we're really, really fortunate to have the chance to learn this. So make sure the motivation you have for being here, participating in this class, is to benefit others, to be of the greatest possible benefit to all other beings from whom we have received all our own happiness, all the good things we have ever experienced in the past and will experience in the future, all the way up to enlightenment. All depends on other beings. So it's only right that we appreciate that and wish to repay their kindness, help them in return. And this is the best thing we can do. So last week we were looking at the practice of Tonglen, giving and taking. So let's do a little bit of meditation on that. So it's recommended that we start with our own suffering, the suffering problems that we'll probably experience in the future. So bring to mind something that might happen to you in the future, like illness or injury, or just the changes that happen to our body as our body gets older, like more aches and pains, losing our eyesight, our hearing, our cognitive abilities, and so on, these declining as we get older. So bring to mind something you'll probably experience in the future, some unpleasant, unwanted experience. And then decide to take on this suffering, accept it as a way to overcome your self-centered attitude, which, as we've learned about and thought about, is a source of all suffering and problems, something we need to overcome to have real happiness and progress along the path to enlightenment. And you can imagine the self-centered attitude as a sort of lump a dark, heavy lump in your heart chakra in the center of your chest. And then think of that future suffering and imagine it taking a form like smoke or fog. And imagine taking it into yourself. You can do this with the breath or without the breath as you wish. And then imagine it coming into you and then it transforms into a bolt of lightning that crashes down on the lump of self-centeredness at your heart and smashes it, destroys it, makes it non-existent. And now feel the absence of that self-centered attitude, which is such a problem, cause of so many problems and difficulties, as well as the ignorance, believing in a truly existing self or I, which lies at the root of the self-centered attitude. So imagine them becoming completely non-existent, vanishing, and feel the peace, the openness, the space, and the freedom from those. And then imagine in that spaciousness at your heart chakra of beautiful light representing love, loving kindness. And then from that, imagine your present body and your possessions, your resources, your virtue, transforming into whatever is needed by your future self to be comfortable and happy and be able to use whatever difficulties are experienced in the path to enlightenment. And then imagine sending those things, giving those things to your future self. Imagine your future self receiving them and benefiting from them. Now let's try the same with another person. So bring to mind someone you know and care about who is suffering. You can imagine that person in front of you. And generate compassion for this person, feeling how wonderful it would be if they could be free of their suffering and the causes of their suffering. then go further than that and feel the wish to take away their suffering and its causes and take it upon yourself and use it to overcome self-centeredness and self-grasping. So again, visualize those two attitudes at your heart chakra in the form of a heavy, dark lump. And visualize this person's suffering and causes of suffering in the form of smoke or fog. Imagine taking it in. So it leaves that person, they become free of it, and you take it into yourself with the breath or just without the breath. And when it comes into you, it turns into a bolt of lightning that strikes the lump of self-centeredness and self-grasping at your heart, smashing it, destroying it, making it non-existent. And feel the peace of being free from those attitudes. How your heart is calm and peaceful, spacious. And then feel how wonderful it would be if you could give to that person whatever they need to be happy and have all their needs and wishes fulfilled. And then imagine your body and your possessions and resources and your virtue, your good karma, transforming into whatever will help that person, will bring them good health, happiness, but also conditions to be able to learn and practice the Dharma so that they can go in the direction of enlightenment. And imagine giving those things to the person, they receive them and experience peace, joy, happiness. Okay, so last week we finished the topic of equalizing and exchanging self for others, that method for cultivating bodhicitta. And then the end, I showed this one slide that shows the combined method, but we didn't have time to go through it. We just, so I thought to start with that today. So tradition says that Lama Tsongkhapa received this method from Manjushri, and then it seems like he passed it on to his disciples for probably, it was handed on orally probably for a few hundred years before it was actually written down in a book. So there are a few, I've seen a few other variations of this, but this was in volume 2, so it's from His Holiness, and I'm sorry, not volume 2, volume 5, from His Holiness, so I think it's good, reliable. So the first point, so it's combining the two methods, which is really nice. It takes the best of both of those methods. So the first point is equanimity, which is evening out our attitudes towards others, other people, other beings, instead of our usual way of liking some and wanting to help them, disliking others and wanting to avoid them or even harm them, and then being indifferent to everybody else. So learning to have an equal concern, equal appreciation for everyone, all beings. I was just thinking this morning about how I don't know if I've ever actually read it, but the United Nations Charter on Human Rights, there's such a thing, right? So that probably says something like this, like all human beings deserve certain things, right? Health and happiness and life and so on. So even in the world, although maybe not everybody agrees with that, but I think it was ratified by most countries, if not all. And then, but that's just for human beings. But I've also heard in recent years, people are talking about animal rights, trying to, point out that they have rights too. We should respect their rights. And so it's kind of just a no-brainer in a way, that everyone deserves to be happy and not to suffer. And we should try to develop that attitude in ourselves. And then, so the first 4 points of these 12 are from that first method, the 7-fold cause and effect method. Although normally equanimity isn't counted as one of those points, I don't know why, but here it is counted. Then next is recognizing all sentient beings as mother. So as we learned before, everyone has been our mother in our past lives. Buddha stated this. It's hard for us to remember this until we develop our mind to the level of the Buddha, but we can take the Buddha's word for it, and it's a beautiful contemplation to do. And then the third is remembering the kindness, and here it's a little different. It's not just remembering the kindness of others when they were our mother, but in other ways as well. And we're quite familiar with that. We often talk about and think about how all the food we eat comes from others, and, buildings, clothes, cars, computers. So everywhere we look in our life, everything we have, everything we use, everything we enjoy and benefit from comes from others. So, it's just countless ways that we receive kindness from others. And also not just in terms of those material things, but of course, love and kindness. It would be very hard to be happy if we were all alone, didn't have any other people or beings to relate to, and, give and receive kindness and affection. So our lives are very much dependent on others, and also for our spiritual practice. We need others to be able to cultivate and practice these beautiful qualities like love and compassion and bodhicitta and generosity and ethics and patience. Yeah, so if there weren't other people and other beings who serve as objects or recipients for these contemplations, these practices, we wouldn't be able to develop them. And that in that way create the merit and virtue we need to progress along the path to enlightenment. So there's no enlightenment without other people and other beings. So that's a really beautiful meditation. And then number 4 is wishing to repay their kindness. So once we get a strong sense of how important others are, how helpful they are, then we naturally want to repay their kindness. So I contemplate different ways of doing that. So then from there, it switches to the other method of equalizing and exchanging self for others. So first is equalizing self for others, mainly contemplating the ways in which we're all the same, like we all want happiness, we don't want suffering, we all have the potential to transform ourselves, get out of samsara, get to enlightenment, and so on. So that helps to break down sort of prejudice, especially what we're working towards is overcoming the notion that I am more important than others. That's what we tend to feel, okay? We all want to be happy, but my happiness is more important than others. My freedom from suffering is more important than others. So we're going in that direction. And then 6 and 7 are comparing the attitudes of self-centeredness and altruism, or cherishing others. So looking at the disadvantages of the self-centered attitude, seeing how that leads to nothing but suffering and problems and keeps us in samsara, prevents us from attaining enlightenment. So we have to really build up a case against the self-centered attitude, so we're really strongly convinced that we don't want to continue feeding that and perpetuating that. And then the benefits of cherishing others, how that just brings all benefit, ordinary happiness all the way up to enlightenment. So again, we need to be really convinced that that is a better way to go, a better attitude to have, so that we put our energy into cultivating it. So then 8 is the kind of conclusion to those 2 meditations, exchanging self and others. We decide, okay, I'm really going to do this. I'm really going to change my mind so that I stop being self-centered and instead be more caring for others. And then 9 and 10 is the Tonglen practice, and it's split into 2 here. So we have 1 point for each. So it starts with taking others' suffering with compassion. And then 10 is giving to others with love, giving our own happiness, our body, the 3 things that were mentioned, our body. Imagine our body becoming wish-fulfilling bodies that can transform into whatever is needed by others, and our possessions, whatever wealth we have, whatever resources we have, material things, also transforming into what are needed by others. And then our virtue, our merit, giving that to others. So here we're training and giving away these things, which really helps us to overcome attachment, self-centered attachment to these things. And then 11 is the great resolve. So that's going back to the 7-fold method. So that's where we, really contemplate, what is the best state of mind to have, what is the best way to use our time and our energy, our resources, and we feel, really I want to make sure all sentient beings are free of every type of suffering and cause of suffering, and they have every type of happiness up to enlightenment, and resolving to do that ourselves. I myself am going to take that on, take that as a commitment, as a responsibility. Then the last point, and this isn't always counted as a separate point, so sometimes this list stops with number 11. It just has 11 points, but the Dalai Lama in the book adds number 12, bodhicitta, which is the whole point of doing these contemplations, is to generate that aspiration or determination to work for enlightenment, to bring ourselves to the state of enlightenment, make ourselves a Buddha for the benefit of all living beings. So most of those points should be familiar because we did go through them over the last couple of months. I think we've been spending. And this won't be the end of it, because Venerable Khadro next month is going to be teaching the 7-point mind training text of Geshe Chekawa. So you get even more about bodhicitta and thought transformation. So wonderful. A real feast of bodhicitta. Any last questions before we move on from this? Selden.
I kind of want to combine or see equanimity and equalizing self and others is the same. What's the difference there?
Yeah, they can be, they do look a little similar. So the first one, equanimity, has more to do with our attitudes towards others, where we normally have attachment. We like certain people and we're attached to them. And we want to spend time with them and help them, do things for them, and that kind of feeling. And then there's another group of people we don't like. We feel aversion, even hatred, and we want to keep away from them, and we don't want to help them, and sometimes we even want to hurt them. So that is another attitude we have. And then towards everyone else, we feel a kind of indifference, sort of not really care about them, almost like they're not there. So this is our present situation. So that's not helpful for cultivating bodhicitta. So working on that to reduce that very imbalanced, uneven way of relating to others. And so we're mainly working on overcoming those attitudes in our own mind and trying to work towards, even-mindedness towards others. And so you think about things like, well, there's no such thing as a permanent friend or enemy or stranger. These relationships change. They're depending on causes and conditions. So that's a really helpful way to think about that. And also on our mind, what's going on in our mind, whether someone appears as a friend or an enemy or a stranger. So you mainly contemplate those points. And then with equalizing self and others, there's different ways of contemplating that. One is to just think about how from the side of others, they're all the same. They all want to be happy and they don't want to suffer. Just like me. So that helps us to, they're kind of similar in a way, helps us to have more even-mindedness towards others, but also, and then there was that whole 9-point meditation, equalizing self and others with 9 different points, and kind of getting progressively more profound to the point of seeing these are just labels that we give, and there's no inherently existing self, no inherently existing other, and so on. So they're kind of similar, but not exactly the same. So Yeah, is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, so we're going to go back to Lama Tsongkhapa's Middle-Length Treatise on the stages of the path. And the next, so we're on page 214. And this next section is called the Ritual for Adopting Bodhicitta. And there's some things in the book that are a little unclear. So I brought some things from volume 5. So this is about taking precepts, taking bodhisattva precepts or bodhicitta precepts, but there's actually different levels of it related to the two main types of bodhicitta. So as we learned before, there's aspiring bodhicitta and engaging bodhicitta. And what's the difference? How would you explain aspiring bodhicitta?
Planning a trip.
Like we're wanting, you're not even, you're just thinking, I'd love to go to Bulgaria or someplace, whatever. Having this wish to go somewhere, but you're not yet at the point where you're making real plans and, buying your air ticket and so on. So it's just like wishful thinking, having a wish. So aspiring bodhicitta is like that. It's wishing to become enlightened, wishing to become a Buddha for the benefit of others, thinking, wow, that would be a great thing to do. I'd really like to do that. And then engaging bodhicitta, what would that be? You buy your ticket, yeah, get your visa, get your shots, whatever. Pack your bags. Yeah, so engaging bodhicitta is when you're really getting stronger in your aspiration and you're actually starting to move in that direction, creating the causes to become a Buddha, to become fully enlightened. And so, so when you have this feeling of bodhicitta, either of those two, you can go through a ceremony, and there's different levels of this. So with regard to aspiring bodhicitta, which is mainly what is coming in the text now, this is what Lama Tsongkhapa is going to be talking about, is aspiring bodhicitta. And he says there's two options. One is, and this is the language used in volume 5, cultivating aspiring bodhicitta in a ceremony without commitment. Without a commitment. And I'll explain shortly what that means. But Geshe Zopa says this is where you think you kind of make this promise to try to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all living beings. You think, yeah, I really want to try to do that, but you're not yet at the point where you want to make a commitment to do some daily practices. So the commitments refer to, there are these, sometimes they're called precepts, sometimes they're called trainings, like in the red prayer book. There's not one up here, but anyway, in the red prayer book, page 75, 76, that's the section on the bodhisattva precepts. So there's these trainings you engage in to stop your bodhicitta from degenerating, right? So we'll go through those later. They actually come in the next chapter. But so you're not yet ready. You don't yet feel, I'm going to commit myself to doing those trainings, to doing those practices. But you just like the idea of becoming enlightened, and you think, yeah, I'd like to try to reach that state. And I've noticed sometimes when His Holiness gives public teachings in the West, and often, of course, he'll talk about bodhicitta, not always using that term, but just, committing yourself to helping others, benefiting others, and so on. And at the end of the teachings, he'll sometimes offer people the opportunity to make a commitment. Yeah, and it's kind of very simple, very, very simple. Not an elaborate ceremony, but and he doesn't talk at all about any trainings or any precepts. He just says, if you feel that you'd like to commit yourself to working for others, benefiting others, then you can repeat these words after me, and he'll say some simple words. So I think that's probably an example of that first one. Yeah, people are just saying, yeah, I really want to help others. I really want to develop altruism and spend my life to benefit others, but they're not really making any commitment about daily practices. So I think that's the first step. Then the second one is called receiving aspiring bodhicitta with commitment in a ceremony. So Geshe Zopa says that this means that you promise to train in preventing your bodhicitta from degenerating. And so you're committing yourself to practicing those trainings, those precepts. There's these 4 causes for preventing bodhicitta from degenerating in this life and also for future lives. So those will be explained later. And it seems that it's the same ceremony for both of these options, but you just decide, individuals will decide in their mind in which way they're doing it. Either they're making a commitment to do those practices, take those precepts, or not yet at that point. So I think this is a good way to go, that you kind of go gradually like this, first make an initial commitment. Yeah, I really want to work for the benefit of others, but you're not yet ready to do daily practices related to that. Then later, when your aspiration gets stronger, then you do feel ready to make that kind of commitment. So this is still at the level of aspiring bodhicitta. And then for engaging bodhicitta, again, that's when you are really definite about working for enlightenment and you want to start doing the main practices for attaining enlightenment, then at this point you take the actual bodhisattva vow, and that involves the 18 root and 46 auxiliary precepts. That's in our tradition. In the Chinese tradition, it's apparently there's a few different versions of the bodhisattva vow in the Chinese tradition, but in the Tibetan tradition, these are the precepts. And again, those are in the Red Prayer Book. So in this book, Lama Tsongkhapa doesn't go into those precepts. He just mentions them. That comes later in another chapter. And then he talks about another text where he does go into those in detail. I don't know if that text is translated in English. But anyway, there's lots of places where we can learn about those actual bodhisattva vow. So these are different options, different levels for going through a ceremony. So what is mentioned here, what we're going to be looking at now, is the first one, aspiring bodhicitta. So, page 214, bottom of the page, the way to adopt it, bodhicitta, by means of a ritual. This has 3 points: receiving that which has not been received, guarding that which has been received without it degenerating, and the method for restoring it if it has degenerated. Okay, so first, receiving that which has not yet been received. This has 3 points: the object from whom it is taken, the person who takes it, and the ritual by which it is taken. The object from whom it is taken. the assertions of the earlier masters accord with Master Jetari, who said that it is not enough for the preceptor to possess the vow of aspiring bodhicitta and to be abiding in the trainings. He or she must possess the vow of engaging bodhicitta. So the person who's performing this ceremony and we're making this commitment in front of them should have the actual bodhisattva vow. And the person who takes it, it says, all gods, nagas, and so forth who are physically and mentally suitable to generate aspiring bodhicitta are also a suitable basis for it. I wasn't sure what was included in and so forth, like maybe kitties, but I think I think mentally they wouldn't be able to generate bodhicitta because you do have to understand the path. And yeah, so you need a certain level of intelligence to be able to generate this state of mind. Commentary on difficult points of Lamp for the Path, it's Atisha's text, says, repulsed by cyclic existence, mindful of death, with wisdom and great compassion. Thus, the vow taker should be someone who has gained a little experience of transforming his or her mentality into bodhicitta by training the mind in the stages of the path as explained above. So I think this is important because I seem to recall, I can't remember where, but some scriptures that make it sound like you already have to have bodhicitta before you take the bodhisattva vow. Maybe that isn't the case with aspiring bodhicitta, but that is a question. And maybe some texts, some teachings, some traditions do say that. But here it's very clear that you don't have to already be a bodhisattva and have uncontrived bodhicitta to make this commitment. You just have to have some experience, even, he says, a little experience of the earlier stages of the path. So like the initial stages of the Lamrim and the middling stages. So at least understanding of samsara and that it's a really unpleasant situation. We want to free ourselves from it. And then some feeling of bodhicitta, of wanting to free all other beings from it. Maybe in the past, I'm wondering, maybe in the past it was the case that before taking bodhisattva vows, one had to already have, uncontrived bodhicitta. But as far as I know, and this is also what Geshe Zopa said in his commentary, nowadays, that is not the case. But yeah, I mean, you have to know what you're doing, and have a feeling. Yes, I want to help all living beings. I want to become a Buddha to help all living beings. You don't have to have full-on bodhicitta. And that reminds me. I think a couple of weeks ago you asked a question. Was it about the similitude of bodhisattva vows? Is that what you asked? And I said I wasn't completely sure, but I found an answer in volume 5, page 217. This is about the actual bodhisattva vow, the 18 root and 46. The Dalai Lama says, most people who take the bodhisattva vow in a ceremony are not yet full-fledged bodhisattvas with uncontrived bodhicitta. Yeah, so that's not a requirement that you have to be a full-fledged bodhisattva to take these vows. As long as you have the aspiration to become a bodhisattva and a Buddha, and the intention to keep the bodhisattva vow as best you can, taking it is beneficial. the bodhisattva vow in your mind stream is a similitude and not the actual bodhisattva vow. Okay? So maybe that's where the confusion comes, that to actually have the bodhisattva vow, not just a similitude, but the real thing, maybe you do have to be a bodhisattva, someone with uncontrived bodhicitta. But if you're not at that point, you can still take the vow, and it's like a similitude of the vow. And he says, but doing your best to live in accord with the bodhisattva precepts will help you to develop bodhicitta and to conduct yourself like a bodhisattva. When transgressions occur, reciting the Sutra of the Three Heaps, the Bodhisattva's Confession of Ethical Downfalls, that's what we call the 35 Buddha practice, together with prostrations to the 35 Buddhas, is an excellent way to purify. In time, you will generate spontaneous bodhicitta and become an actual bodhisattva. So I don't think it would be right to think, oh, I'm not an actual bodhisattva, I just have a similitude of the vow, and then not take it very seriously. That wouldn't be good. I would set up some bad habits. So yeah, so if we do transgress any of the vows, then we should do confession, purification, and retake them. That's actually part of the practice, is to recommit oneself to the bodhisattva vows 6 times a day. That will come later. Okay, then the ritual by which it is taken. This has 3 points: the preparatory ritual, the actual ritual, and the concluding ritual. So the preparatory ritual has 3 points: special going for refuge, accumulating the accumulations, and training in the attitude. So first, special going for refuge. And again, this has 3 points: decorating the place, displaying representations, and setting up offering substances. That's the first point. The second point is making a request and going for refuge. And the third is stating the trainings of having gone for refuge. Yeah, so it is said that to take the bodhisattva precepts, we should have refuge. Okay, we should take refuge. And most people have probably already taken refuge before. But here, it's called special going for refuge. So there's certain aspects of taking refuge here that are Mahayana, especially in accord with the Mahayana path. Okay, so first step is decorating, setting up representations and offerings. Clean and isolated place. Isolated, I guess it just means not in the middle of town, and it should be quiet and peaceful. So we have plenty of places like that here. Then smear it with the 5 cow substances. Okay, let's go down to Frank's farm and see if we can get that. Yeah, I guess this is, I don't know, they call it bachung, arising from cows. And it's, let's see if I can remember, it's milk and butter, yogurt, and then dung and urine. So maybe it's from Hinduism, because in Hinduism, a cow is considered sacred. I'm not quite sure the story behind that, but cows are sacred. So anything coming from a cow, even cow dung, is considered sacred. So Tibetans actually make pills, bachung pills, made with these 5 substances. And so if we have that, we can use that. Otherwise, I think Ajax and things like that. Or maybe non-toxic, non-perfumed cleaning substances. and then anointed with exquisite perfumed water, such as sandalwood water, and scatter fragrant flowers. Set out representations of the three jewels, metal statues and so forth, texts and so forth, and images of bodhisattvas on a throne, a table, or a raised platform. Do the preparatory ritual with items such as canopies and flowers that are as valuable as possible, as well as music, food, and so forth. Arrange a throne for the teacher and also adorn it with flowers. The accumulation of merit is done by paying respect to past masters and the Sangha, and by giving a torma offering cake to the elemental spirits. So when His Holiness gives Bodhisattva vow, like the full-on one, they really make a lot of beautiful decorations, flowers everywhere, and everything nice and clean. If you do not have any offerings at all, as described in the Good Eon Sutra, it can be done even by offering scraps of cloth. So even if you don't have lots of nice things to offer, just, bits of cloth is okay. The important thing is your mind, having the motivation. If you do have offerings, they should have been obtained through great effort without deceit, and should be arrayed in such a way that your friends cannot help marveling. Your friends will go, wow. When Atisha was asked to confer the mind generation, that's bodhicitta, by Tibetan teachers in Mangyul and Samye, he reportedly said that it did not arise through inferior offerings. So it is important to kind of show our sincerity and our good intentions by making as many beautiful offerings as possible. He also said that a consecrated statue of the main master of the teachings, meaning Buddha Shakyamuni, was imperative as a representation, and at least the verse summary of the Perfection of Wisdom should be used as a text. So that's the 8,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. So even if we don't have that, Heart Sutra is good enough. Then the assembly of Aryas is invoked. The student, washed and well-dressed, so we should clean ourselves and put on fresh clothes, with hands joined, is encouraged by the Guru to generate clear faith in the excellent qualities of the merit field from the depths of his or her heart. He should then slowly do the 7-limb practice and imagine that he is in front of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So it's good to do an extensive 7-limb practice like the one in King of Prayers, the first 2 pages of the King of Prayers, where there's a number of verses, especially for prostrating and making offerings and so on, and do it with sincerity, because in that way we accumulate merit and purify our mind, making our mind ready to receive these precepts, making a request and going for refuge. Then the student generates the perception of his guru as the teacher, Buddha, prostrates to him and makes offerings to him, including a mandala. With his right knee on the floor and palms joined, he makes a request for generating bodhicitta. Just as the Tathagatas, Arhats, and perfectly complete Buddhas, as well as the great bodhisattvas, abiding on the great grounds, first generated the mind of unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment, likewise I, whose name is request the Master to generate the mind of unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. So requesting the Guru to help us generate this state of mind of bodhicitta. And repeat this 3 times. And then the student goes for refuge with the behavior explained above to the objects, the Buddha, the Dharma, meaning the true paths that mainly bring about the cessations, and the Sangha, the irreversible Arya Bodhisattva. So this is one difference in the normal refuge ceremony. The Sangha isn't specified as being Arya Bodhisattvas, but here this is like, the context, the Mahayana context of aspiring for enlightenment. So the Sangha mainly means the Arya Bodhisattvas who are irreversible, meaning they've reached a point in their practice on the path where they will not fall back. They will not give up their aspiration to become a Buddha and go in another direction instead. The student thinks, from now until I achieve enlightenment, in order to protect all sentient beings, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the teacher of refuge. I go for refuge to the Dharma, the actual refuge. I go for refuge to the Sangha, whom I ask to be my companions in practicing refuge. And then with a general and special attitude, the student makes the strong aspiration, I will never turn away from this attitude at any time. And then there are these verses that are repeated 3 times. Master, please grant me your attention. I, whose name is da-da-da, from now until I reach the quintessence of enlightenment, go for refuge to the best of humans, the blessed Buddhas. So this is another difference between ordinary refuge, because when we do an ordinary refuge ceremony, we just say, from now until I die, right? Remember that? So we're just promising to take refuge for this life until we die. But here it's saying, from now until I reach enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddhas. Master, please grant me your attention. I, whose name is, from now until I reach the quintessence of enlightenment, go for refuge to the best of dharmas, the dharma that is peace, free from attachment. Master, please grant me your attention. I, whose name is so and so, from now until I reach the quintessence of enlightenment, go for refuge to the best of assemblies, the Sangha of irreversible Arya Bodhisattvas. So again, that's different than ordinary refuge. Repeat this 3 times. The request for attention when going for refuge to each of the jewels and the unusual words of going for refuge to the Dharma accord with the ritual composed by Atisha. I'm not sure what it means by the unusual words of going refuge to the Dharma. Anyway, stating the trainings of having gone for refuge, here too the master should mention the trainings that were explained above in the context of persons of lesser capacity. So I guess that's the usual guidelines, trainings, precepts, whatever you call them, of taking refuge. After taking refuge, then what we need to do, what we need to not do, and so on. Okay, then accumulating the accumulations. As before, the 7-limb practice should be done in the presence of the direct and lineage gurus and the merit field explained above. So after taking refuge, this refuge ceremony, then again doing the 7-limb practice. Training in the attitude, the observed objects and aspects of love and compassion should be visualized as explained above. So yeah, again, visualize the objects in relation to whom we're doing this ritual. I don't know about objects of compassion, aspects of love and compassion. And then the actual ritual. So here's where we actually make the promise to cultivate aspiring bodhicitta, either with or without commitment. In front of the master, the student should kneel down on his right knee Sitting in a crouching position is also appropriate. With palms joined, he should generate bodhicitta. Mind generation, that's another term for bodhicitta. Here is not the mere mind generation that thinks, I will attain Buddhahood for the welfare of others. Rather, one focuses on that mind that has been generated and makes the promise, I will not give it up as long as I have not attained enlightenment. Thus, generate that attitude and reliance upon ritual. If you are unable to train in the precepts of aspiring bodhicitta, you should not make this promise. So here he's talking about these two options. And mainly he's talking about the second one, receiving aspiring bodhicitta with commitment in a ceremony. So you're actually promising to engage in the trainings, the precepts, to stop bodhicitta from degenerating in the future. So he's mainly saying that, but he's also saying if you don't feel ready to do that, then you shouldn't make that promise. And he goes on to say, however, everyone may ritually generate the mere thought, I will become a Buddha for the welfare of all sentient beings, regardless of whether they are able to train in the trainings of mind generation. So that's the first one. So he's saying, you can choose, you can decide which of these two levels you want to take on. Does that make sense? And he says, these two approaches may be appropriate for aspiring bodhicitta, but it is inappropriate to ritually take on engaged bodhicitta without training in the precepts. So he's saying that those two options are possible with regard to aspiring bodhicitta, but when it comes to engaging bodhicitta, you can't do that. There's only one option there, and that is you're actually taking on the commitment to keep those precepts, the 18 and the 46. So it's helpful because I this isn't always so clearly explained, and I think if I remember back in my own experience, I took bodhisattva precepts really fast. I was, just within a couple of months at the Tibetan library, I took refuge, and then I think somebody wanted to take bodhisattva vows, so there was a ceremony for taking bodhisattva vows, and I jumped right in and said, yes, this is what I want to do. Nothing else I want to do but become a Buddha to help all sentient beings. So very quickly I jumped right into engaging bodhicitta. So I think it's good to go slowly and gradually and really know what you're doing. Then he says, therefore, it is incorrect to claim that there are differences among the many vow rituals passed down by Nagarjuna and Asanga in terms of whether or not it is appropriate. So footnote number 90 explains this. So I'll just read the footnote. Tsongkhapa is here addressing a claim made by Shakya Pandita and others that there is a distinction between the Madhyamaka, descending from Manjushri via Nagarjuna and Shantideva, and the Yogacara, descending from Maitreya via Asanga and Chandragoman, as to who is qualified to take the bodhisattva precepts and in the vow ceremony itself. Sakya Pandita speaks of a Madhyamaka tradition of bodhicitta, but Tsongkhapa insists there is no distinction between the two Mahayana schools when it comes to bodhicitta. So, just for, you might encounter that at some point. So according to Tsongkhapa, there's no difference in those two schools. Karya.
Taking the bodhisattva vows, it's a really strong commitment, and you really need to, as you said, go like gradually. So my question is, if it is a huge commitment, why some teachers give the vow so easily? Because you're going to create a huge amount of bad karma if you are not going to be doing what are you engaging with. So that's my question.
Yeah, it's similar with tantric initiations. Yeah, they also very easily, I mean, sometimes it's like the very first time they come and give a teaching. They give a teaching and then they give a tantric initiation. And it's like, a lot of the people there probably don't even know what they're getting themselves in for, but they, yeah, that sounds good, I want to do that. So, I don't know, I've heard there's one view that says, well, even if you break the commitments, and maybe you create the cost to go to hell, but at least you have that connection in your mind. You have that strong connection with the Mahayana teachings, with the Bodhisattva path, with the Tantra path, and so on. And so in a future life, that will enable you to, again, reconnect with these traditions and be able to follow them. So there's that view. So maybe that's why teachers give them very easily. Because this is one thing too, when you do take a tantric initiation, any tantric empowerment, any tantric initiation, you have to take the bodhisattva vow. That's part of the ceremony, and you don't have a choice. You can't just do the first one, But you take on the whole bodhisattva vow. So a lot of people find themselves in that situation of taking bodhisattva vows, and then maybe some daily tantric practice before they're even sure what tantra is all about. So it does happen. And I mean, I think Venerable Children doesn't encourage that here, right? She encourages people to go slowly and know what they're doing. I mean, it could be because, in Tibet, the situation in Tibet, they had Buddhism there for, since the 6th, 7th century. So that means 1200, 1300 years. Probably 99% of the people in Tibet were Buddhist. Very, from the time they're born, they're surrounded by Buddhist culture, Buddhist practice. They're very familiar with it. They find, not everyone, but many just find it so easy to have faith. It's almost like, it's a natural inborn faith. And so, so I think in the Tibetan context, because of that situation, then things would be done very easily, giving empowerments, giving vows, and da-da-da-da-da. Even little kids, go to empowerments. Maybe they don't actually take them because they don't know what's going on, but, they're brought up in that kind of culture. So maybe that's the way the lamas were doing things in Tibet, in Tibetan culture. And, I mean, not every lama is like that when they come to the West or they go to other countries, other cultures. Some are very conservative. I know one lama who, he went to France, Dokpo Rinpoche, wonderful lama. He went to France in about 1960. I think the university in Paris wanted a Tibetan lama to teach Tibetan history and language and so on. So he was sent by the Dalai Lama. So he's been in France since 1960 and mainly teaching in the university, but also starting to teach outside. And I first met this Lama in Singapore because he had some students, Indonesian students, and they found out that he's considered the reincarnation of Lama Serlingpa, Atisha's main teacher, who lived in Sumatra. And they said, have you ever been to Indonesia? And he said, no. And they said, oh, we want to take you there. So they brought him to Indonesia, and they stopped in Singapore on the way. And it was about 1989 or so. That's when I first met him. And he made a number of trips to Singapore when I was there. And we requested him to give Avalokiteshvara initiation, Thousand Armed Avalokitesh for initiation, and he agreed. And his translator said, wow, you guys don't know how lucky you are. He has never, ever given an initiation. So the whole time he was in France, by that time it would have been almost 30 years, he never gave an initiation. He taught Lamrim. Maybe he gave bodhisattva vows, but never initiation. So that's one example of a Lama who, is very cautious about, and mainly emphasizing the basics, Lamrim. So yeah, there's, different lamas, different teachers have different ways of doing things. Yeah.
And when you are taking the bodhisattva vow with that preceptor, there is also a samaya commitment with that preceptor?
Oh yes, oh definitely. So that person will be your Mahayana, a Mahayana spiritual teacher. Yeah.
So when we take the highest Yoga Tantra initiation and we do succession Guru Yoga, every day we take the Bodhisattva vows again. So that's very helpful to keep current with what we're doing.
Yeah, that's part of the succession. So that practice, the succession Guru Yoga, was deliberately created to make sure that people are keeping their commitments and not just going to an initiation and then, not doing anything afterwards.
The first time I took teachings from His Holiness is in Los Angeles, and it was just a few months after I had taken refuge. And I was very well schooled, and you don't take the Bodhisattva vow until you're ready. So I'm sitting there in this audience, and His Holiness is going to give a Shakyamuni Buddha initiation, which I didn't know what it was, and I still haven't heard about it ever since. But, and I knew that I wasn't ready for such a thing. But of course I wanted to take it. And then he started to talk about the imprint that would make, and yes, your Bodhisattva vow is required to do this, but if you are here and have the clear intention that that's the path you want to follow, then what I will give you will plant the seed that will make that grow. And, I still went away and thought about it, and I thought, if he has faith enough in me that that's the truth, then I'm going to go for it. But I think he was very clear and kind about the value. Of course, it was His Holiness that also made a big difference. But it was like the commitment was there, and I've heard people someone ask Geshe Sopa once, how come we have to take the Bodhisattva vow over and over? And he laughed and laughed. He just laughed, and then he said, do you think you have the Bodhisattva vow? So there is that element of how pure our intent is at any given moment, and then the opportunity to have a Lama like His Holiness give it to us doesn't come very often. Yeah.
And also, we can retake Bodhisattva vows. I think that was something Geshe Sopa mentioned in his commentary. He said, with our pratimoksha vows, like our bhikshu, bhikshuni vows, if you break one of the 4 or 8 defeats, you lose it and you can't retake it in that lifetime. You're finished. But that's not the case with the Bodhisattva vows. Even if you break one of the root Bodhisattva vow, you can retake it. It can be retaken again and again and again. And of course we can purify. And every day we do 35 Buddhas. And so, that's there, it's very difficult to keep all those vows perfectly and purely, but I don't think anyone expects us to. It's like, we have the chance to purify and retake them.
That's when the general confession in the 35 Buddhas starts coming alive, because it's specifically you are purifying, you're breaking of tantra commitments, harming sentient beings, disrespecting your teacher. All the things that come along with taking these more committed vows, it really does come alive because they're fairly specifically laid out on what you are purifying when you get to the general confession.
The general confession isn't part of the 35 Buddha practice. I'm not sure what is the origin of that, where that comes from, but it's...
Yeah, yeah, I know that it's not in the sutra, but whoever put that on the end of this,
Yeah, in the Tibetan tradition, they recite it in Bodhisattva, Sojong. So it's recited 3 times. They do it so fast, you hardly, you can blink and it's over. Yeah, so it's just to confess everything.
because the 35 Buddhas doesn't specifically talk about breaking your Tantra commitments and
No,
things like that.
that's completely sutra.
Right, right. So
So the
when you're
general
saying using that
confession must have been
added,
written by someone in Tibet.
yeah.
It had the tantric, because it mentions Vajradhara and the tantric commitments and so on. So, yeah. Okay, then, where are we? Okay, bottom of page 218. The Advice to the King Sutra says that if one cannot train in the precepts of generosity and so forth, a great amount of merit is accomplished in mere mind generation. Mere mind generation, I think that means aspiring. Yeah, so if you're not ready to take on the engaging, the full bodhisattva vow, then it's still very, very beneficial to generate this first one, aspiring. Taking this as its source, the first stages of meditation, Kamalashila says, those who cannot train in the perfections fully in all their aspects should still generate bodhicitta thoroughly conjoined with method, because the results will be great. And so that's talking about aspiring bodhicitta. Thus, it is clear that it is appropriate for someone incapable of training in the precepts of generosity and so forth to adopt the mind generation, but inappropriate to take the vow. So we should only take the actual bodhisattva vow when we're ready to start practicing the 6 perfections. The ritual for adopting bodhicitta, and again this is the aspiring bodhicitta, is as follows. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas residing in the 10 directions, please grant me your attention. Master, please grant me your attention. I, whose name is so-and-so, by means of the roots of virtue of the nature of generosity, the nature of ethics, and the nature of meditation that I have created, caused to be created, and rejoiced in the creation of, in this life and in previous lives, just as the previous Tathagatas, Arhats, perfectly complete Buddhas, and great Bodhisattvas, thoroughly abiding on the great grounds, generated a mind of unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. In the same way, also I, whose name is so-and-so, from now until I reach the quintessence of enlightenment, will generate the mind of unsurpassed, perfectly complete, great enlightenment. I will liberate the beings who are not liberated, free those who are not free, give relief to those without relief, and cause those who have not completely passed beyond sorrow to completely pass beyond sorrow. So you do that 3 times. So there's different verses that are used. This is kind of a long one. His Holiness uses usually shorter ones. And in fact, there's in the Nyungne practice, right at the beginning of the practice, there are these verses about taking refuge. I don't remember how it goes. But anyway, he sometimes uses those verses. So there's different ones that can be used depending on the master. And the last part where it says, I will liberate the beings who are not liberated. There's different ways of explaining that, but the usual way is that's talking about those who still have the obscurations to omniscience or cognitive obscurations. I will, that would be the arhats and the bodhisattvas on the pure ground. So I will liberate them from those last remaining obscurations to enlightenment. And then free those who are not free. That refers to those who still have the afflictive obscurations that prevent nirvana. So I will help them get rid of those so they can get out of samsara. And then give relief to those without relief is referring to those who are in unfortunate realms, like hell, hungry ghosts, and animals. So I will, help them get out of those states and then, bring everyone to the state beyond sorrow. So do that 3 times, then, even though it is not clearly mentioned, it is necessary to repeat these words after the master in the refuge ceremony and in this ritual. This is the manner of adopting bodhicitta in the presence of a master. Atisha's mind generation ritual says what to do if we cannot find a master. So you can also do this on your own. He says the ritual for generating bodhicitta oneself in the absence of a master is as follows. Having brought to mind the Tathagata Shakyamuni and all the Tathagatas of the 10 directions, prostrate to them and do the rite of offerings and so forth. Then, as with the previous order, make the request and go for refuge, but leave out the word master and so forth. So it said that, if you can't find anybody to give you the bodhisattva, in relation to whom you do this ritual and make this promise, you can do it on your own, visualizing the Buddha and the Buddhas and bodhisattvas. And you do the same procedure, but you just don't use the word master. Concluding ritual, the master should proclaim the precepts of the aspiring mind to the student. So for those students who are doing number 2, receiving aspiring bodhicitta with commitment, then the teacher will explain these precepts. So this is going to be explained in the next chapter, which we can do next week. Okay, any last questions?
In the ritual for adopting bodhicitta, arhats are mentioned, and it sounds like they're included in, the Buddhas and bodhisattvas who have generated bodhicitta. So I'm just a bit confused about that. Arhats in kind of the middle of that.
No. I think that refers to the Buddhas. There's this expression to the Buddha.
It's an epithet.
Yeah, it's an epithet. I mean, the Buddha is an arhat.
Okay.
So I think it's just part of that whole series of epithets of the Buddhas, the Tathagatas. They are Tathagatas, they are arhats, they are perfectly complete Buddhas. And then it mentions the bodhisattvas. I think that's what it means.
Okay. I have another question, which I've been thinking about the past couple of days. There's this instruction to think that we want to liberate all the beings that we see when we come in contact with beings, and then also hear about liberating those who are not liberated, removing cognitive obscurations or helping to remove the cognitive obscurations of those at that level. I really struggle with thinking how am I going to help those who are on the 9th ground,
Well, I mean, at this point in time, as we are now, of course, we're not able to do that. But even to help one sentient being right now, we're not really able to do that. But this is our aspiration. So I think we have to include all sentient beings, because those are sentient beings. Sentient beings includes everyone who's not yet fully enlightened, okay? So it's not just the ones who are, drowning in samsara, still full of suffering and causes of suffering, but even those who are on the path, and even those who are 10th ground bodhisattvas and not yet there to enlightenment, that we make that commitment. Of course we can't do it now, but this is our long-term goal. We want to make sure everyone who isn't yet enlightened will get enlightened. So we're taking on that responsibility. That's how I think of it. Yeah, so Buddha, a fully enlightened Buddha, isn't just focused on the sentient beings who are in samsara, but is also thinking about arhats and the bodhisattvas on the pure grounds who are almost there, getting close, but they need help too. So that's how I think of it.
Remember, if we take the bodhisattva vows, do we confess any transgression during posada?
No. Pasada is for pratimoksha vows. So if we break bodhisattva vows, we do that on our own. Although I think I was reading in volume 5, there's one whole chapter about the bodhisattva vow in the Tibetan tradition, and then another chapter about the Chinese tradition. And I think it did mention that in the Chinese tradition, they have some ceremonies, like in the temple, people come together and maybe as a group, they purify. It sounded like that. I don't think we have that I haven't heard of that in the Tibetan tradition. Also interesting, it mentioned that in the Chinese tradition, there's different bodhisattva vows taken by monastics and by lay people. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, at our full ordination, they had on Posada Day, the first time we did Posada, after receiving the full ordination, we hadn't yet received the Bodhisattva vows, the third platform. And so they had, after we read the Bhikshuni precepts, those who had the Bodhisattva precepts in the Chinese tradition stayed and actually read those. So it's part of kind of the way they often do Posada, is to have that Bodhisattva component. But we didn't see what it was like because we didn't have those yet.
Okay. But we don't do it here, right? It's not part of our Posada. Oh, lots of hands.
So you said we confess those on our own. So we confess those to the Buddha and...
Yeah, like in the morning.
And we do the
35 Buddha practice. That practice, the confession to the 35 Buddhas, that is specifically for Bodhisattva precepts. So.
Okay, thank you.
Palma has.
When I was in France, we would go to Nalanda to do the confession, the monastic confession, and at the same ceremony there was also confession of the Bodhisattva, breaking the Bodhisattva vows and the Tantric vows. So those who did not have those, they had to leave and come back after.
I see. Okay, I hadn't encountered that before. And that was the Geshe, the abbot of Nalanda, who instituted that. Bodhisattva vows. Really? Well, the general confession, that practice, that prayer is part of the Sojong ceremony, and that does mention, tantric precepts, bodhisattva precepts, and so on. But other than that, I don't remember encountering any other ritual that's done in a group. But maybe something will come to my mind later. Yeah. Okay, so we'll stop there. Dedicate.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forever.